morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Insurance for Nonprofit Social Services. You're going to learn about nonprofit, specific type of nonprofit organization. And my name is Anae Augustini. I'm CEO of CID Insurance Programs. And I want to introduce our speaker today, who is Stephen Heck from USLI. He's a nonprofit package underwriter. And then, of course, we've got Michelle Belden, who's our nonprofit and commercial underwriter. And then, last but not least, is Jacob Cole, our marketing specialist, who oversees all of our, he makes sure that these webinars and all of our marketing go smoothly. So let's just talk about our logistics so that I can turn this over to Stephen, and he can teach you guys a lot of things about nonprofits. So as any of you have been online with us before, you know that we mute our listeners or attendees, and so you'll be able to hear but not speak. But your questions are super important to us. So you see the chat room right to the right on the little bar. Please feel free to type in questions as we go because we really want to hear from you, and we will answer them as we go. There'll be a short survey at the end of the webinar, and we would really like to get your feedback on how helpful this webinar was, and if you have any ideas for future webinars. So without a hesitation, I'm going to introduce Stephen Heck.
Whoa, sorry about that. Went a little too fast there. Thank you, Anae, and thank you again to CID and Michelle and everybody for putting us on. We've got a great partnership with CID, and at USLI we are just one of the many markets that CID has. So please keep that in mind as we're going through this. Again, I work for USLI. I am on our nonprofit side. Today, again, we're going to be talking about the social human services product that we can offer and that you all have access to. It's just important to note, I think, from a lot of the different products that we offer and that CID offers. There are some products that are pretty cut and dry. For example, we also do churches or houses of worship. We do HOAs and condo associations. The social and human services product and class, there's such a wide variety of different risks that can fall under this umbrella. So you start marketing for this. If you see a lot of it, as you know, there's just going to be kind of a wide variety of different array of coverage options, features, and types of organizations. So it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what it may look like, but we're going to try to help explain a little bit about how we classify and how CID can help you get those different types of risks covered. So as far as the different objectives that we're going to go through, again, what is social services? What exactly are we talking about? Understand how they're covered and how USLI can provide the different coverage, how we've looked at different opportunities, and really tried to understand how these, not only what these organizations do, but also how they should be covered from an insurance perspective. We'll look at some claim examples that'll probably help illustrate exactly what we're talking about. Again, where to find these types of opportunities because you're going to be marketing for them or because maybe you already have marketed for them. You maybe understand that it's again, a little bit hard to pinpoint, but we'll help you kind of through that and what that kind of looks like, and then how to get the quotes. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get you a quote as easy as possible. Again, if it's not going to be a fit for USLI, you've also got the opportunity to quote them through CID as well. So social human services. So again, from a nonprofit perspective, a lot of this stuff, and from a for-profit perspective as well, a lot of this stuff begins and ends with, what is the root problem? So typically when we're dealing with these types of organizations, we're really looking at the organizations that are helping combat the different types of, illnesses and different disparities out there, that occur in our society. We live in a society now where a lot of this has been a lot more, prevalent and highlighted. I think, 50 years ago, this probably still existed, but now we just have a lot more awareness in our society. So these numbers, I won't go through every single one of them, but just gives you a pretty good idea, an illustration of what the problem is. So there's tens of millions of people that are dealing with some type of illness or some type of disparity. it doesn't discriminate. So you have all genders, all races, socioeconomic backgrounds. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of different issues. And what's occurred is now there's a lot more awareness, and there's a lot of organizations and entities that are out there that are helping people through these issues. And I think everybody in here probably has been affected, or at least knows someone who's been affected by it. So there's a lot of resources out there, which is a wonderful thing. And again, from an insurance perspective, those organizations also, much like any other organization, will need insurance. So we see that there's about 1 million different types of organizations that are out there. By contrast, these are just some kind of fun facts, if you will. There's about 250,000 fast food restaurants and about 30,000 specialty coffee shops, so something like a Starbucks. So although you may think you see those on every street corner, you can look at contrast. There's 1 million of these organizations. So there's actually 4 times as many, in some instances, 10 times as many social service organizations than fast food restaurants or coffee shops. And again, it's growing. So as the awareness grows, as the population size grows, so does the need for these types of organizations. And as far as what a social service risk is, how it's classified. So again, there's a wide variety of different organizations that are out there. But how does USLI and how does CID kind of see these organizations? So you can do the real basic ones, which are those food banks, soup kitchens, and thrift stores. A lot of times, churches and houses of worship, when they're sending their volunteers, they're going to those types of organizations. They may even have those type of those entities, associated with their ministry groups. We also do residential programs, so this can be adult shelters, halfway houses, transitional homes, abused, women's shelters, all that kind of stuff. That all falls within this purview as well. Counseling centers, so we do mental health counseling. We can do animal therapy. We can do a wide variety of different counseling. We were doing just the strictly, like eating disorders and that kind of thing. But over the past couple of years, as we've really opened up our appetite, we've started to really look at the mental health, crisis out there and try to understand those organizations. So we're getting into the mental health aspect as well. And then again, the youth and the senior type of services. So, a lot of times when you're dealing with poverty or when you're dealing with health issues, a lot of organizations do focus on either youth or senior. So we do see a ton of these types of organizations that have like after school programs, senior centers, Meals on Wheels programs, caregivers, both non-medical and medical. We can do all of those types of those organizations. And again, CID also has access to some other markets as well that do this type of these types of risks and exposures. But there's just, as you can see, once you cast that net, there's a wide variety of different risks that can fall under this. And as far as rating, so I'd say the best thing to do is just get whatever information you can. Most of this is going to be the description of operations. So what are they doing? So we've had multiple times where we could look at an organization and they say they want to save the world, and then you look and you see all this stuff on their website, and it's just a whole gamut of different stuff. And then you look at their financials, and maybe they only bring in $10,000 a year. So what are they actually doing? Maybe they're only just feeding the homeless. So then you can just let us know, what do those receipts look like, or what are the number of meals they serve. Many times we're going to go based off square footage. So if you have the square footage, if you have the number of professionals there, that's going to be good for us. But I would encourage you just to get whatever information you can, so we can kind of make our best, delineation on whether or not we can actually provide the coverage, and then how we can rate it. So we talk about a lot, what we can do, and at USLI, these are some different things we can't do. Again, CID could have another option for you, but at USLI, as far as the ineligible risks, the ineligible exposures, we're not going to be doing human adoption foster care. We can do animal adoption foster care, but just not human. We won't be doing like Boy Scout organizations or those that have an extensive exposure to outdoor camping activities. Same thing with construction. If it's like strictly a construction-based organization, We're not going to be doing those. A lot of times those political organizations, we're seeing a lot of that right now, especially in the current political climate. We just won't consider those if they're just focusing on one political issue. We can do it if it's like a bipartisan kind of thing and they're just spreading awareness. But political activism is going to be out for us. And then adverse loss history, obviously, if they've got 10 different claims and it's $1 million in claims activity, we're probably not going to take a look. I would say that we can still consider some losses, so don't let that scare you away. Some other things just to note is that if they're just doing these on an incidental basis, so let's just say they have one outdoor camping, trip, or they have one construction project, they have, one little part of their operation that has some of this, we can still consider it. We have ways of kind of getting through that and covering the remainder of the organization if it's something we really want. But if this is a primary operation up here, it's probably going to be out for USLI. Just keep a note, we're talking about GL there. So if it's a D&O and EPLI they're concerned about, we actually might still be an option for them. And then again, as I keep saying, just note that CID could also have another market. As far as a package solution that we're offering, so USLI is really known for service. We'll get stuff out same day. So if you get through CID and they send it over to USLI with it, you're pretty much going to have a response within 3 to 4 hours. That's what we're striving for. These types of organizations, it may take a little more research and rating information, but we can usually get you a response same day and very quickly. So we've really tried to understand how we're going to keep this within the same model as underwriting a small little risk that we do with the rest of USLI. But with these types of organizations, we're going to package all 8 lines of coverage, and we'll get through that in just a second of what we're talking about. We're understanding that these organizations, again, they have similar exposures as other organizations, but we're also trying to be sensitive to price and sensitive to coverage like the E&O and the abuse and molestation. So we've devoted a lot of time and resources to providing that specific package tailored to the nonprofits. And again, we're trying to do that quick and easy. These are going to be admitted in the vast majority of states. I think there's only a couple states that were not admitted, but the vast majority, especially the larger states like California, Texas, Illinois, Florida, New York, we're going to be admitted. And it's going to be direct bill, and it'll be easily renewable. So if you come up on renewal, all you really have to do is just tell us you want to renew it, and then we can proceed with binding it. So it's sticking with that easy, efficient renewal and quoting process that's similar with anything else you probably received from USLI. So as far as what we're talking about when we're talking about the different coverage lines, we're doing the general liability, and within that we have the E&O, so it's really contingent medical malpractice, or something like a counseling. And again, we'll get through a claim example here in just a second. But if they have like a counseling organization and there's mental health counseling, those individuals will likely need that E&O exposure. So we do provide that. That is going to be a separate limit from the GL, but it's just kind of considered under the GL umbrella. So it will be a separate limit. We do the abuse and molestation as well. Again, similar for a lot of these organizations that deal with youth and seniors specifically. They might be requesting some higher limits, so we'll have that as well, also a separate limit. We do have blanket event coverage, so just keep in mind a lot of these organizations, they're going to be looking at doing fundraising activities, and a lot of times they're going to be they may not have an actual location, and maybe they're going to go to different areas to have their fundraising events. We include all of their blanket event coverage up to 1,000 people. Usually that's going to be sufficient. If it is over 1,000 people, we could consider on a special event monoline basis. But please keep that in mind that we can definitely provide those blanket events, and that will all be considered underneath the GL, and we won't be charging extra for that. We can also do the higher non-owned auto coverage. We can do property. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of times these organizations don't necessarily have a building. If they do, we can do that, but we can also do, like the contents, business personal property, business income, all that kind of stuff if they're looking for that. Nonprofit directors and officers and the employment practices liability. So again, a lot of times these organizations are ran and they're being fundraised through a board, and these board members may be high net worth individuals. We can go over all the different coverage features that we have at a later time. But we do have a very strong product in the nonprofit EPLI and the D&O that we can also package in this package. Again, if it's not going to be a fit for the GL or the property or something like that, we could actually consider D&O on a monoline basis as well if that's needed. We can do the crime and then the excess. So if they are looking for excess limits or higher limits, we are seeing a lot of that in California right now. We can go up to $5 million for that. And again, just the features, as I mentioned, there's separate limits for those different coverage lines, and then some different features of our D&O, really protecting the individuals on the board. And those defense costs outside the limit that's a huge advantage, because a lot of times right now, whatever is being alleged, these organizations still have to fight these claims and go into the courts to really defend themselves, and we will provide those costs outside of that $1 million limit, so it won't erode that limit. So again, more questions on that, we can definitely go through those, but those are some high-level coverage features. As far as what pricing looks like, our minimum premium in California, it's kind of a funky way they do it. So if you're adding property and you're adding some other different coverage lines, a lot of times we can actually get that package at $500 or less in California, and these are minimum premiums. And $735 is for the GL coverage specifically. In all other states, if you do have the property or other coverage lines, obviously you're going to add some additional premium. But again, with California, sometimes we can get an entire package for this under $500 $500 as the minimum premium. Property coverage, again, if we're dealing with contents, you can usually get it about $250. And then D&O and EPLI, we can go as low as $500. It just depends on the different coverage features that they're looking for. But we're just trying to be price conscious in certain areas. Again, as you'll see in a couple other slides, we can actually get the premiums. The premiums can be pretty robust if they have a lot of different programs and services. But if they are a smaller one, we're going to be pretty price conscientious.
Hey, Stephen,
so
did you
yes, of course.
note that question that was on the screen?
Of course.
Whether the umbrella covers all of lines of coverage, abuse and professional?
Sure, and I'm sorry I did not see that question. So yeah, so the way we do the umbrella at USLI at least is going to be over the GL. We can go over our D&O and EPLI, but it would have to be USLI's D&O and EPLI. Again, CID could have another option there, but from USLI's perspective, from the umbrella and the excess, we go over just the GL, and then the D&O and the EPLI if it's USLI. The GL, we could actually go over another carrier's GL. We also do have the option of going over the E&O and the abuse and molestation. I believe that's only up to about the 1 million excess. So we wouldn't do the E&O and the abuse up to 5 million. We'd only do it up to 1 or 2 million. It would just depend on the risk. So if they're heavily involved with youth, we might take a look and see why they're requesting that coverage. But we are able to go over several different coverage lines. It just might be unique with a different risk. Hopefully that answers the question. No problem.
And one more question.
Yes.
Does the group have to have a building?
Does the group have to have a building? No, not at all. Absolutely not. So if they do have a building, we can definitely put it on there. But no, if it's just GL, or if they're just looking for coverage for their different programs and services that they're providing outreach for, not at all. They don't have to have a building. I think the interesting that's kind of what I was hopefully. Maybe I wasn't as clear. I was trying to kind of explain how that usually looks. These types of organizations typically don't have a building, honestly. Usually they're going to be out in the community. That's kind of the whole point of these outreach organizations, is that they're out there helping the community. So we don't have a premises limitation on the policy. So wherever they're going to be operating, we're going to be able to cover them. I think the confusing part is that we do ask for square footage. So if they don't have a building, then how are they getting the square footage? You can just use the square footage there. Maybe when they're in a classroom or maybe for their board meeting, they're meeting in like some conference room or something like that. Just give us an idea. This is also where we could probably just put something like 500 square feet, and then just rate based off maybe the other activities they're doing. So I think that's kind of the idea, is that we just want to make sure we're pricing them appropriately. But if they don't have a building, that's really not a problem. And like I said, the vast majority of the time they're not going to even have a building, but we can cover if they do have one. All right, I'll try to keep this up so I can see any more of these. Okay, so as far as claims examples, so these just kind of go through. The first one's the E&O, second one's the abuse and molestation, and then the third one is the directors and officers coverage. So again, I'm not going to go through every single detail of these claims, but it gives you an idea of why these types of organizations do want or do have the need for the coverage. Not every organization will have an E&O exposure, but a lot of them do. So again, if you're dealing with nurses, caregivers, if you're dealing with counseling, it maybe is not a claim frequency that we see. We don't see a ton of these types of claims, but when we do, a lot of times it's going to be pretty severe. So we're dealing with claims severity a lot of times. So somebody's suing because someone gave them the wrong advice or somebody administered the wrong medicine. You're going to see a pretty high claim there. So it is good for them to have the coverage. And a lot of times we can get the E&O coverage, that pricing premium, underneath the minimum premium anyway. So they're not really being charged extra for it. Now, if they do have, 5 different counselors or 5 different nurses on staff, again, that's where we want to know the staffing information so we can, rate appropriately for the E&O. We may have to charge a little bit more depending on how many professionals are involved. As far as abuse and molestation, again, similarly, if you're dealing with, youth and seniors, if somebody, is involved in some sort of inappropriate act, it may not happen all the time, but when it does, the claims are going to be very severe. So obviously, these are usually part of requirements now. If they're going to be requested, if the organization is going to be asked for like a certificate of insurance, a lot of times they're going to be requesting the abuse and molestation coverage for these types of organizations that deal with, again, specifically youth and seniors. And then the D&O, these are really the operations. So how they're allocating the funds and how they're deciding, making decisions and deciding on where to use the fundraising, income that they're getting. We just want to make sure that that we have a good board that's going to be listening to their donors and putting those funds where they're supposed to be allocating them. If they don't, or somebody acts, independently and does their own thing, well, that's where this coverage is going to come into play. So we want to make sure we have that on there, and also just again to protect the net worth of the individuals themselves that are on the board. So just some high level kind of ideas of where these coverages may come into play, and we're happy to walk through some more examples if you have some questions on those as well. So as far as some recent successes that USLI has had, and I know CID has had a couple of these as well. This is where as I mentioned earlier, the package premium can be pretty robust. We do again want to be price conscientious because some of these are working with tight budgets, but this gives you an idea, at least from your perspective, when you're going out and selling these, that this is worth it, that the commission dollars can start getting up there, if you're dealing with a larger organization and one that we can do, maybe we do the whole package and the property and the GL, but again, we do want to make sure we understand what the insured and the applicant can handle. So we're willing to break off different pieces if this price doesn't work, but it just shows you that these different types of organizations, a lot of times if they're getting large and maybe they do have a building or something involved, we can definitely write some higher premiums depending on their operations. As far as where you're going to find these, so as I mentioned, if you don't already see them, or if you don't know if you already see them, you may actually have different opportunities already at your fingertips. GuideStar.org, if anybody right now is in front of a computer, you log on there, it'll take you to a wide variety of different nonprofits. essentially all the nonprofits that are registered in the country. There are going to be some nonprofits that are not 501c3 registered. CID and USLI can consider those as well. So if they're just operating like a nonprofit, then they're really tiny and they haven't had the time to be tax exempt, that's okay. We can still consider those, but the ones that actually do have the 501c3 registration, they're going to be on this guidestar.org, and there's just hundreds of thousands of different organizations on there, and you can kind of scroll through there and they'll give you an idea of where these organizations are located within your region or your city. As far as professional organizations, these are like trade associations, and you can go through and you can just ask if any of these organizations have an agent, they have a broker, and you could try to maybe get in there and get your foot in the door and start understanding the organizations, and then hopefully making contacts in that world so you can actually start being their insurance agent and their carrier eventually, once they start understanding their exposure and you start understanding their coverage needs. As I mentioned, you may already see some of the different leads. We look at a lot of church risks and a lot of church applicants, and many times they're affiliated with these social human service organizations. So please take a look at those, and the church facilities that they own. A lot of times, again, the church does own the building, but maybe this social human service organization, maybe they just rent a portion of it, or they just use a portion of it every month. You'll have a lot of contacts in that world. So if you do have churches, take a look at those, because they could turn into some opportunities. Special events, as I mentioned, we do blanket events. So just keep in mind that if you do see an organization, really in any nonprofit for that matter, they may actually not even have insurance coverage themselves, but when they go to the event venue or they go to the church, something like that, those landlords or the owners of the premises will be requiring a certificate of insurance, and that may be how it comes into you. So then just make sure you take a look at that and help them understand they could get annual coverage, and it may actually be the same price or cheaper. And then we could get them on a renewable annual policy instead of that one-off special event. So just take a look at your book of special events and just try to recognize if there's any nonprofits that may fit under this type of product and this type of organization. And then D&O and board. So if you have a whole book of D&O and EPLI, again, very similar to cross-selling with events and churches, just make sure you understand that these organizations also could be available for that no premises GL annual policy, and we could even stick them on the same package if they've got a need for that. So just take a look at your book and see if there might be any opportunity there for us to cross-sell. So as far as what to do going forward, again, I kind of mentioned exactly what that looked like. Just take a look at your book. So if you have anything that you think might fit under this product, or might fit under this this class, just give CID a call. Send this over and see if USLI or one of their other carriers can take a look at it. Usually, again, it's going to take a little bit of time to understand the description of operations and programs on your end. But once we get that, USLI can turn this around the same day. Let us know if you have any marketing material that you're wanting. I know we've worked a lot with CID in the past on a lot of different products. We have that same stuff available, for the social and human service product and class. Take a look at your D&O and special events. We'll take a look at phone quote reports and requoting prior business. All of this stuff is already in the pipeline, and going forward, we can take a look at it going in the future, so we can help you out, and CID can help you out, kind of write the business and take a look at what we can offer. How to get a quote. So again, we want at bats. So the only way we're really going to know if we fit or if we have a market or if CID can really help you out is if we get those quotes over. So please take a look at just sending those paper apps or really anything you've got. Again, it could just be a description of operations. Send that to submissions@cidinsurance.com. It's possible we could do it for the instant phone quote and on the web. Many times, again, these are going to be organizations with a lot of moving parts and a lot of different programs and services. So just keep that in mind. It may not be something we could do instantaneously on the web or over the phone, but at least we can talk you through it. And we've got different chat features. We've got different phone quote features that at least you can get somebody on the phone in real time to talk through it. And then if we have to take a look at it through a paper app, that's fine as well. Sometimes if it's like a very, very easy food bank, we can actually just go ahead and do that over the phone for you. So any way you want to get it to us is the whole point. Just let us know. And again, these are some a couple other phone number and an email for Michelle. She does handle the nonprofits for CID, so make sure you reach out to her specifically as well, and she's more than happy to talk through these. And again, if we all need to get on a three-way conference call and USLI, wants to help out with what we can offer, that's great. Otherwise, Michelle can help you out with not only USLI but some other carriers as well. And that really takes us to the end today. I really do appreciate those of you who have joined and CID for allowing us to kind of represent what USLI can offer. We've had a great partnership with CID over the years, and we really do look forward to doing business not only with them but everybody that that's on the line right now. We'd love to get some more of this in the door and see what we can offer. So with that, I don't know if there were any other questions. And Anae.
Questions, Stephen,
okay.
But thank you so much, Stephen. That was so informative and really appreciated. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all. Thanks again.